Hello, and welcome back to another episode here at the SteelerFury.com podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Kohlman. You know me as Smith is Smoking on the message boards, joined by Wil Masisak. You know him as Bradshaw to Ben, and you can catch him at his handle on Twitter as well, Accidental Zen. It's a good follow. He puts some really thought provoking things out there. And Korey Karbowsky, you know him as Korey39 on the message boards. Gentlemen, welcome back to a win after a trip to the jungle, which we had mixed opinions on. I'm glad that I'm on the right side of things this time because I wasn't on the right side of things the week before. As where you guys predicted the first demise against the Browns, you did not, or you predicted a demise against the Bengals, but it did not come to fruition. Even though the game started off with a pick six, which at that point I was like, shit, they did it again. But thank God the Steelers bounced back, made it a heck of a game. Saw an offensive explosion of sorts that we have not seen before to a degree. So, well, let's just dive right in. Russell Wilson, 400 some yards. Yeah, he got one pick, but should have been a penalty. They didn't call it. But boy, it was sure nice to see a vertical passing attack as kind of featured almost at times this week. I was reading something on Twitter where the Steelers basically ran the same play like 12 times throughout the game. And it was just basically everyone go downfield and Russell's going to find whoever's open. So, uh, what do you guys think about the game and how it unfolded?
I mean, man, 44 points. That's the most in a while. I'm sure Will has the last time we scored that many, knowing him
Yeah,
or one of you two.
37 on offense, but still not insignificant.
Yes. I mean, they put up points on us. We knew that's what me and Will predicted. I didn't think there was any chance we were scoring 44 points as a team.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess that just shows they have another gear in them, and they can at least win in a different way than we kind of expected. So I think this is a good win, just as like a proof of concept that they can win in this manner. But this is a weird one because like just for the Bengals' sake, like where do they go from here? Like you're gonna have a ton of money tied up in your core that is playing well, but you're gonna have to figure out the rest of the stuff. But good for us, fun win. Um, Still uneasy even towards the end, but it was a nice win to show that we could at least win in that manner.
Korey, these are your Pittsburgh Steelers. Nothing is ever in the books until the fat lady sings. So I don't know why you keep thinking we're going to have some games where that isn't the case. But Will, what were your thoughts about this one?
Well, I mean, by the way, you said it didn't come to fruition, but it very nearly did. That the Bengals. I mean, I think it's this thing we talked about earlier in the season where the Steelers kind of have the mystique going right now, like the Patriots used to, like the Chiefs do, sort of now, where teams will just make mistakes at the end of the game that seem like small things, but they're turn out to be the difference in the game. The first one was and by the way, I mean, I appreciated the win, and I'll talk about good things in a second. But just while I'm on the stack, Jamar Chase, the long catch and run that he had, he at the end of it, he didn't know what to do, and so he like fought for an extra half yard instead of going out of bounds. That was the difference between having to kick off a deep. They would have had the ability to kick off deep versus kicking an onside kick and then being dependent on making a stop immediately because it would have stopped the clock before the 2 minute warning and with enough time to score and still have that extra timeout.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a big enough mistake. But on with the game on the line, basically not covering the quarterback keeper to the outside with Justin Fields in the game is like this is like Washington jumping off sides on a fourth and short that there's no chance they're going to go for it. Like you just have to be almost brave as a team to have nobody there saying, this is coming. Look for this. Don't get out of your rush lanes. No matter what happens, don't jump a snap or whatever. Like there just has to be somebody at the end of the game who is better than that. And I'll take it as a Steelers fan, but it feels like we have maybe 3 wins this year where the other teams just like lost it, in the last couple of minutes of the game. So yes, there is something to being good at those situations and expecting to make the right choices and so on. And for all of the sort of who knows about what goes through Mike Tomlin's head, the hamster and the wheel in there when it comes to clock management. But in terms of his players, at least believing that they know what to do at the end of the game to win and the other team won't, seems to be paying off. And if I'm sure we'll get to Hard Knocks, but it painted a very flattering picture of Mike Tomlin, more so than, what we only see on Sundays and in press conferences.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. But like I said, a win's a win. It wasn't pretty at all the times, but we did find a way to win in ways we least expected it. Which kind of goes back to my point last week. This offense does feel like it can do this on a more regular basis. So I hope we start, I don't know, God forbid it, but attacking other teams on offense more regularly than what we have been, because we've seen what we can do now, and don't get me wrong, the Bengals defense is not good by any means.
No.
It's really, really bad. So I know we are kind of putting up points and yardage. I think we had over 500 yards of offense. That would happen. Russ went over 400, and we ran for over 100 too. So over 500 yards of offense. But can we do that against the better teams, I guess, is the question. So we'll just kind of see, how that goes. So
I mean, Jeremy, that I was very impressed with, we've said a million times on the show that if you play an inferior opponent or their defense is bad, that your job is to take advantage of that you're not supposed to let them hang around in the game and, and so on and so forth. So in this case, they did, they attacked stuff that the Cincinnati Bengals defense is like, it almost doesn't matter how you attack them. You just can't play passively against them because they'll give up so many yards and points, right? But I felt like, in contrary to what you were saying about a vertical passing attack, yes, they took their vertical shots, but I felt like the game plan was, let's run 4 verts and stuff downfield and then dump it off. Dump it off to Najee, run screens, dump it off to the tight end. They got a lot of mileage out of that in this game, and that, if it's available to you, that's great. I remember, the year that Le'Veon Bell left, that became sort of a big part of the offense that year, where Ben was finding Connor and Connor was making plays underneath, and it feels like that part of it is working. So that, they're threatening downfield and then dumping it off. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, well, it's a time and tried strategy too. You look at Peyton Manning and Tom Brady. How many dump offs did they have to the running backs in their careers? But the big thing is they knew when to do it, So, and that's what you're alluding to. It's like now we're mixing in that wrinkle again, now that we can go down the field and use other areas of the field and stuff like that. So, Najee Harris was averaging like almost 9 yards a catch this game, which is, pretty ridiculous considering how not fast he is. But it was also good to see him come back in the game. He kind of went down funny and then came back in, so it was good to see him return. But luckily the Steelers are getting healthy at the right time of the year. We only had one person on the injury report today, and we brought Corey Trice off IR as well. Waived Jonathan Ward in the process to bring him back. So apparently today was the last possible day the Steelers had to bring Trice back without him being on IR for the whole year. So who knows if everyone did a full practice today outside of Cam Hayward, and that was just because he's a veteran. So we're getting healthy at the right time of the year. We're winning AFC North games, but we do have another AFC North game. Before we move on to that other AFC North game, do we have anything else we want to say kind of about the Bengals game? Anything along those lines? Other than we do still need to fix our run defense lanes. Chase Brown got loose for quite a few.
Yeah.
It was kind of pissing me off.
I think here's the thing. I'm sure the Steelers defense they're not used to seeing speed in practice at the running back position, So the guy that's that quick and fast, they don't practice against that. So I'm sure, other than, Justin Fields lining up at running back, I'm not sure how easy it is to adjust to like that difference in burst. I'm actually being serious about the the fact that it has to, it's not how you practiced all week, and you tried to give the scout team look of the other team. But I think that's a hard thing to adjust to for the Steelers, and it's something that has been giving them trouble recently. So I don't know, might be something to it. I got just my last word on this game is it's great that they scored points. They were aggressive. They knew that they were going to give up some points and yards to the Cincinnati offense because everybody does. And Burrow, I think, is playing, for lack of a better word, elite football right now. He might be playing as well as anybody who's playing quarterback in the league.
Mm-hmm.
So if you know that guy's on the other team and they're probably going to score some points on you, even with your vaunted defense, then yeah, you got to get out there and score a lot and score early and keep being aggressive, which they did. They get lots of credit for that. And they get credit for the fact that they're winning. They're 2-1 in the division right now. And entering this stretch of games that last week was a game that they could not afford to lose. It was a real swing game for perhaps the rest of their season. So all that stuff is great. I'm just not really sure I'm buying into the offense being elite suddenly because they destroyed Cincinnati's, defense. I'm a little bit more concerned about what this week's opponent did against a really good defense. In a way, yeah, they made mistakes and they got past it. I mean, they didn't get past it in the end, but it's like, that was a really impressive performance in a way because they did it against the defense that's so much better than what the Steelers did it against.
Yeah, I want to do one more thing off this game just because I found this quite funny. So my sister and brother-in-law, they live in Cincinnati. He grew up a Bengals fan. So after the game, he literally texted me this. Now that the game is over, did you see any bright spots for this Bengals defense moving forward? Or do they only have Trey Hendrickson? And my literal response was, start playing the rookies, buddy, because you need to start finding out what you got and what you don't. Yeah. Wanted to throw that in there just for shits and giggles. That they know the season's over in Cincinnati. By the time we play them on January 5th to close out the year, their season will be over. They really had no room for error. This was a game they had to win against Pittsburgh, and now that they're 4-8, that they have to completely win out and then have a lot of other playoff contenders like Denver. I was about to say San Diego, but they're still not in San Diego, folks. They're in Los Angeles. The Chargers do that all the time still. The Chargers are in the hunt. The Ravens, are in the hunt and wild card. It's like you're not catching any of them. So it's like the season's over for Cincinnati, and we kind of put the nail in the coffin. So always fun to do that to a divisional rival with like a month and a half left of football. I don't know about you guys, but it's fun. Brings up great conversation times around the holidays too. But anyway, got another AFC North game. I still don't understand this from the scheduler's perspective. I don't understand how you can play the Browns one week, play another North team, and then just put the Browns back in again. Like it should be criminal that you play the same team within a span of like 14 days. It just doesn't make sense to me. It's like you would think at the NFL head office, they'd fix the algorithm to say, hey, we're not going to play back-to-back, games essentially. But, I digress. I'll get off my soapbox. But this time, instead of going up the turnpike, the Browns are coming down the turnpike. They're coming to Pittsburgh. Boy, we better just – I'll jump right into it. If we don't account for Myles Garrett again, it's going to be a long game. I know we did a much better job on him in the second half of that game in Cleveland, but, it's basically because of him why we had to do everything in the second half just to try to win that game, and we ended up losing anyway. So, for the love of God, fine 95, put 3 men on him. I don't care what you do. Just don't let him wreck your game. So, any other matchups we should be on the lookout for, Browns? I know it's kind of repetitive because we kind of did this podcast 2 weeks ago, but after, watching them recently, has anything changed for you guys when it comes to the Browns?
Nick Chubb kind of had his mini breakout versus us in his first game. Then was a little quiet last game, but still put a touchdown on the board, had some catches out the backfield. I think he's one of those guys where he gets rolling a little bit. It's one of the backs you don't want to face. he's one of the premier backs when he's 100%, which I'm sure he's not there yet, but he looks like he's starting to get a little closer to it. So that's kind of the one I'd keep an eye on. He just because, if he broke out on us a little last time, he's probably licking his chops to get back at us this time.
Yeah, and well, before I get to you, Will, looking at the Browns injury report, looks like Cedric Tillman's still going to be out. He's still dealing with concussion. Jedrick Wills hasn't practiced either day, so it's not looking good for him. Jamari Thrash, he's just a rookie wide receiver who hasn't played a whole lot this year. Juan Thornhill's limited today, but that's an upgrade from a did not practice. So other than that, Browns look pretty healthy too. So,
well, they still JOK he's like out for the year, right?
At this point. I don't even think they have him with how bad they're doing this year. I think they've just told him to get well, bro.
Yeah. Well, I've heard that it's potentially career ending, so that would be another problem. Yeah, and which is probably their best player on defense.
Yeah, and if you're a college football fan, his brother committed to Michigan, or brother or cousin, I can't remember, but he has a brother or cousin who's a 4-star linebacker that just committed to Michigan. So be on the lookout for him in like 4 years.
Nice.
Sorry, Will, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I mean, I'm concerned about if the Steelers put too many resources on defense into playing better run defense this week, and Chubb, their Chubb becomes more of a concern than he was, or just the idea of their running game being more effective. Their quarterback threw for 500 yards last week. It's not like he didn't make his share of mistakes. He literally had 2 pick sixes in the game, and also an end zone pick at the end of the game that more or less cost them their shot at the game. Which is none of that stuff that's not nothing, but you've got Jerry Jeudy having a breakout game against a struggling Joey Porter Jr. with the penalties. I think was he called 6 times for penalties last week?
It was a lot. I mentioned to you guys on our chat after the game that it's like he has got to clean it up.
Yeah, so I think you put all that together, and I think both the quarterbacks combined threw for almost 1,000 yards last week. With Russ Wilson had a huge game, as did Winston, and that kind of makes me feel like right when we're expecting this offensive explosion, that it may turn back into a very close and low scoring game. Sometimes that's what happens when there's this concern that the other team is putting it together on offense. Then just turn into that like Tomlin ball, Marty ball thing where everybody is trying to get possessions and keep it rather than necessarily attacking and scoring. But it is a concern to me because it's not like the defense has been lights out recently. They've had some issues for sure.
Yeah, honestly, if you two didn't bring up Jerry Jeudy, I was going to. Honestly, he has thrived as the go-to number 1 for Cleveland, especially with Jameis Winston at quarterback, because he's actually a guy that knows where to go with the ball, can get the ball out quick. This will be his 3rd game starting, I think, since he's taken over. So it'll be interesting. You guys always say it, the reversion to the mean. If we start to see, how teams play, after you get a few weeks of game tape on a guy, on a quarterback that's been thrust into a role, not that he doesn't have a million hours of tape at other places, but it'll be interesting because I do think he's a bit of a wild card. He keeps them in games and keeps them competitive, and he can burn you, if you make mistakes. So I think the biggest thing I tell my guys this week is, make sure you keep him in the pocket. Don't let him get out a little bit. We saw it at the end of the Browns game, unfortunately, the last time. He's mobile enough to hurt you with his feet if you let him, and he ends up scoring the game-winning touchdown with 40-some seconds left, and that's all she wrote on that. So we got to be prepared. I'd be telling my defensive line, make sure you keep him in the pocket, make sure you get your hands up. I know he's like a 6'5" quarterback, but it's get your hands up because they are going to get the ball out of his hands as quick as possible in the passing game. So mentioning defensive line, Alex Highsmith is projected to be back this week, so we could have 4 healthy edge rushers. If you include, Herbig, who had a big strip sack to kind of seal Cincinnati's chances this past week. TJ Watt got back in the action too with strip sack and all that. So good to see those guys feasting. That they need to do that again this week because those guys, our edge group, struggled against Cleveland. They were chipped, they were run at. This is the time of year where you have to dig deep and find a way to make a play. So that's definitely one thing want to look at. Any other matchups want to say? Oh, another thing, just real quick, Calvin Austin practiced in full this week or today and yesterday apparently. So it's a good thing. Looks like he's going to clear concussion protocol is the word. I read somewhere online that he's wearing a new helmet too. So we'll see if maybe that helps as well. It's not a Guardian cap apparently. It's a new style of helmet that he's wearing. So we'll see what that does. But any other
the helmet that makes Powers Johnson, the center, look like I mean, I don't know. It's not a flattering look if it's that. I'm sure it works for concussions, but yeah, it's not real slick. Yeah. By the way, Jameis Winston on the Jameis Winston thing, obviously everybody's talking about reverting to the mean, and he's been playing really well, so he's due for a bad game or whatever. But here's the thing about Jameis, this season's statistics are almost exactly in line with his career of 10 years, meaning he has the exact same completion percentage, the same ratio of touchdowns to interceptions, the same yards per attempt, the same quarterback rating, basically, as he has for his entire career. So this is who he is. It's the 1 week, looks pretty good in a win. The next week throws for a lot of yards and touchdowns, but also throws crushing picks. So that's just the Jameis Winston experience. I mean, he's fun though. You got to admit, Jameis is a fun watch always.
I was about to say, as consistent as he has been with his career, his character has never faltered either. He is one entertaining dude, to say the least. After all, he's praying for the Lord to deliver him from pick sixes.
That's the best. What a line. Oh, my God.
Man. Well, and then I want to flip over to something else here really quick because we're getting something this year that we've never gotten for in the past. We're getting an in-season Hard Knocks look at the AFC North. So out of curiosity, did you guys get a chance to watch the inaugural episode?
I did not have it.
You guys want to? No?
Oh, no.
Corey.
Oh, no. I totally watched it. I don't know if
I should have given you guys homework this week. Make sure you watch an hour of TV.
Have you guys watched previous stuff, installments in this series?
Yeah.
You watched other Hard Knocks, right?
Yeah.
I think it's really difficult to have any other takeaway for the first week other than that, the other teams in the division are kind of like, they're trying to be motivational and they're trying to say the right things and get, motivate their players and teach them things, whatever. But man, it's like Mike Tomlin really got it down, like he is, whether he's just portrayed this way in the show, it's really emphasized, or I think he just gives you opportunities. He's, he is that finding the thing with each particular player that works. And I think that part of his coaching acumen is very well practiced because he's been in the league for a really long time and he's figured out something that works. And I think it's genuine. He actually, tries to reach those people. It's not like he's thinking, I got to check off this box. It's just, hey, I like this kid and I'm going to encourage him. But I was just complaining a week ago to some friends of mine about how I never had coaches that were encouraging. I always had the coaches that were the hard ass, and whether or not you deserved it, they would be critical, right? And there was never a time where you'd think, oh, I just want one crumb of praise from him and I'll feel better about myself. And there would be never a payoff, right? And that's the thing about Tomlin is he will give you the juice when he feels it's deserved or if he feels like it's the right thing to say to you. I don't know. I felt this Hard Knocks is really making him look good. And I as someone who's been critical of him, it's hard not to watch that and think, okay, well, this is, we're getting something real with him in terms of how he builds for the postseason or how he chooses to try to get better at the things he's not as good at. I can't say, but I know he is locked in and totally, that he has the team working for him and working together in a way that's not nothing.
Yeah, it was, like you said, we only see what we see on Sunday. So it was a nice little peek into, the work week of the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's like, it's not just the media quips at the end of a practice and, the standard is the standard, all the cliche little phrases he loves to say when he talks to the media, all that stuff. It was fun to see that behind the scenes look. Even during the game, when they were playing Cincinnati, him taking Cam Hayward into the locker room saying, he's like, hey, you need to galvanize this group. It's still a long game to play. Whether it was him talking to George Pickens after that, I think it was the first third down for the Steelers that resulted in that pick six. It's like you didn't go tear George Pickens down, for not winning at the top of the route. It was like, hey, it's one play. You're going to go make some more. And, you're going to help us win this game. So, but like you said, it's very easy to get in that mode to tear down a player rather than to build up a player.
Yep.
I have to say, when I started watching the Steelers, it was Bill Cowher, spit flying in your face, it's like, that's what I thought a coach should be like or whatever. And, we've seen Tom in all these years. We have our little grievances of, what we'd like to see or whatever, but it's like, we got to see more of the man behind the screen, behind the camera this week. And I think that's going to put a lot of the crap to bed out there, on the internet of like, oh, has he lost prior teams or whatever? It's like, I don't think that's ever been the case. Like, I don't think you can ever say, oh, this man's lost the locker room. It's like, you can tell he cares about the players. He wants everyone to succeed. And obviously he wants to win. So I don't know, but it was a fun, unique little lens into that environment.
I mean, I think it's great. I've been longing for this for, since they started Hard Knocks, just to try to get an idea. And I would have loved to have seen it in the building when Ben was there. It just feels like a Joe James Harrison. Like they had some real characters. That was the one thing my one takeaway was the Steelers don't really have characters like the way that, I mean, like not these wacky ones like they used to have. They always had a bag of guys like that. And now they have Pickens, who was barely in the episode. But for the most part, they're sort of like, very regular. Like when Cam Hayward, NFL Man of the Year is the guy that has the most personality. Like I think, here you've got a different kind of a vibe. I don't know. Like I do think it does reveal that they win with, this passion and the energy and getting the guys locked in and not necessarily with schematics and, scheme, like things that are putting them in position to win exactly. Although I was encouraged listening to Mike Tomlin talk about during the game that Joe Burrow was, he's been stepping up and beating us over and over again. We have to stop that because that's exactly what I was saying during the game. And that's an observation that I think it's maybe easy to miss when you're the head coach and you've got all these things going on around you. But to see the most obvious thing of this is what they're doing right now and it's killing us is a big part of game day coaching.
Yeah, you got to see some of that, weekly game planning stuff, points they wanted to do or whatever. So it was just a fun look at the Steelers, one we have not had in the past, one that they have resisted for God knows how long. They have been, kind of in the running for a Hard Knocks or so in the past, and they have been like, absolutely not. You're not getting in the door. We're not letting this happen. And, finally, that they're in the doors, and it's, in the most interesting division in football, potentially, with it being the AFC North with the rivalries that exist. It's like we play Baltimore in 2 weeks. I'm sure. I know you said we didn't really get much of George Pickens, and maybe some others. They got some more episodes to make up for that. But I mean, I thought there were some other like great little clips throughout the episode. Like apparently Joe Burrow bought one of the Batmobiles from the Dark Knight series, which I'm not gonna lie, that's fucking awesome. Like if I could do it, I'd do it too.
Well, I'll give you a sneak preview without even seeing next week's episode. It's going to be about Jameis Winston and to a slightly lesser extent Deontay Johnson. I think those are the two guys that you're going to see a lot of on Hard Knocks next week.
Boy, I'll tell you what. I was one of the people that was very critical for getting rid of Deontay Johnson. I take all my hands off that. I retract everything I ever said. Because boy, that's looking like the one of the best trades of the Steelers of all time. Like that's just how the sagas went for Deontay Johnson ever since he left.
Well, let's not forget about the Chase Claypool trade, which is also a big one.
That's fair. Don't get me wrong. I'm embellishing this a little bit.
So just quickly, and I'll let Korey speak. I mean, we've been talking a lot about things.
That's true.
Didn't even see the show, but that Deontay Johnson, I heard from the team source that he asked to be inserted in the game in this second quarter of last week, and he said basically put me in the game or release me, and they didn't put him in the game then, and then later I think maybe in the fourth quarter they wanted him to go into the game and he refused to go in. So
yeah,
this is the the back and forth wide receivers, man. Can't live with them, can't cut them all.
Yeah, I had only heard the last part of that, the refusing to go in the game. I had not heard about that prior thing, but Korey, what do you think is going on with Deontay, and like what the hell where does he go from here? Like his career is getting very close to going down a path of no recovery.
I'm just gonna be honest. If we brought Cam Sutton back, I'm pretty sure we'll bring Deontay Johnson back. So
wow.
I'm surprised if he got cut at the end of the year, then he just signed back here. That's my prediction right now.
Like, I mean, he did have some nice words to say, in the locker room after, I think it was that Baltimore game. I'm not sure, but, something about being forever grateful to the Steelers and stuff. So I don't know if he's already like prepared his 3-part apology to try to get back in the team's good graces or whatever. But I don't know. Yeah, I mean, they got rid of him because he wasn't gelling with the locker room. I mean, would you really put that in the locker room after, we're what are we now? 9-3. Sorry, excuse me. Yeah, 9-3. Yeah, 9-3. Well on our way, to this being a team. Do you really throw him into the locker room at this point and see if it'll work? Or I don't know. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, skill-wise, that's exactly what we need at wide receiver. Which is why I wasn't a big fan of us trading him. We need that route savvy guy with somewhat decent hands, but
I think that answer is a lot easier once we see how the playoffs end up. I think that's where you do we need him or
so to be clear, are you suggesting an off season of bringing him back? Okay.
Yes.
I thought you meant like, if things escalate with the, Ravens, like it kind of seems like it is right now, that they're like, screw it, we're cutting you. We didn't give you up. We gave up nothing for you, middle of the year acquisition thing. So sorry, that's what I was thinking of. I was not fast forwarding to the offseason already, but
I mean, here's the bottom line though. They have no number 2 wide receiver. I mean, I'm as big a Calvin Austin fan as there is, but they don't have a guy who's like, can beat man coverage and, get open on quick routes. It's a missing element of their game that would make them better, make them a better candidate for winning postseason football games. Right now, as bad a season as he's had, he would still be the third leading receiver on the Steelers and would be tied for third for the most touchdown receptions, right? So, and that's an absolutely lost season for him. So it could definitely help them on the field. I can't say what it would do for them in the locker room if you bring a guy in like that.
Yeah, it's just it'd be very interesting to see how the locker room would receive that, in my opinion. But yeah, especially
bring back Antonio Brown. He wants to come back too. So
he wants to play for free, though. There's a difference. Oh no, I'm just joking. But I don't.
Martavis Bryant also available. Bring them all back.
Yeah, why not? Let's relive. Screw it. Bring Ben back too. Let's bring them all back. Screw it.
Oh my God! Wasn't it Le'Veon Bell at the beginning of the season said he wanted to come back too? Maybe they really are going to put the band back together.
Oh my God, that'd be hilarious. Don't get me wrong, but incredibly improbable.
Yes.
But it's kind of funny, you see that or whatever. There's been a lot of guys that have like moved on from the Steelers and been like, the grass is not greener. elsewhere. It's like no one realizes how good they have it in Pittsburgh. I don't care how many, team reports come out about how the facilities aren't the best and oh, they don't have the player family room or whatever and all that crap. But it's like everyone kind of realizes, Pittsburgh is a special place to be when you're there. It's just a completely different way. It's the Steeler way. We've kind of joked about it before, but it's true. As soon as people leave and they realize the grass is not greener, they're like, yeah, I kind of made a mistake.
Listen, you watch Hard Knocks, other than the upholstery on Tomlin's film room chair, everything about the Steelers facility and the way they do, set up and how it looks for people practicing and in the rooms compared to Cincinnati. Oh my God. Like Cincinnati is like getting sent to prison in comparison.
Right. And Baltimore's looks like, a Hilton, to a degree. It's like they have all the nice aesthetics and all that or whatever. And it's like people rag on Pittsburgh because they have to share a facility with the Pitt Panthers. It's like big freaking whoop-de-doo. But
hey, that got us Kenny.
Right. Well, and James Conner too. I mean, he's one of those guys that just flipped to the other side too. So it's funny how that is. That there haven't been more Pitt Panthers to make their way over through the doors, but regardless, it's just a fun new little wrinkle, during Steelers season, So if you did not catch the first episode of Hard Knocks, it's on HBO every Tuesday. I think it airs at 8 or 9. I can't remember. I think it's 8 to 9, something like that. Best part is you get your commercials out of the way at the beginning too. There's no commercials in the middle. So yeah, just a fun little new wrinkle for the Steelers season. And I guarantee you with the success they're going to have with this, that's going to be following a different division every year. So it's just more, oh, bummer. The NFL has more programming that they can make money off of. Oh no. They got to love it.
I recommend it. It's great.
Yeah.
But it's a great show.
Yeah. But with that being said, not everything is about the Pittsburgh Steelers in the AFC North. There are some other games getting played this week. Got a few up on the board here. I think a very interesting one, and we'll jump out to the West Coast early. That NFC West division is just still completely up for grabs. It doesn't matter how bad those teams play. Someone has to win that division. That's kind of the same way about the NFC South. Someone's got to win that one too. So, but the first game got Seattle headed to Arizona. Arizona's a 2.5-point favorite. Korey, let's start with you. I don't feel like we've given you enough airtime this episode, so feel free to embellish your thing a little more.
I'm gonna go with the Cardinals here. This used to be the famed division only a year or two ago. This was the division in the NFL. It's kind of funny how things can turn around. And I don't know. I've been more of a Cardinals fan this whole time. Seattle's kind of fun. They've had some offensive coordinator issues, but this is like a big division game. These teams are one off right now.
Yeah,
one game,
all within like a game or a game and a half of each other. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean this is a fun one. I think the Cardinals are going to win. They lost to Seattle not last week. I think it was the week before, and I think this is just kind of a good equalizer game. So that's where I'm going with this.
Gotcha. And yeah, you mentioned the game and a half. Yeah, the Seattle leads it at 7-5. Then you have Arizona and the Rams at 6-6, and you never would have guessed this to begin the season, but the 49ers are bringing up the rear at 5-7. I know they're not out of it by any means, but you're talking about like a complete flip of what people probably thought that was going to look like. So I'm sorry, Korey, you said you were going to Arizona?
Yeah, Arizona.
Okay. All right. Well, what's your take on this one?
You guys are too young to remember the 1976 season, but the Steelers have just won the Super Bowl 74 and 75. And pretty much everything that could go wrong went wrong in 76. And then just towards the end of the season, they got healthy and they got players back, and it seemed like they'd be able to make a run. And then they lost both, which at that time was a huge part of the offense, both Franco Harris and Rocky Bleier and some other people in the first playoff game that they won. So they were just doomed. That season was just like a lost season. That feels like where San Francisco is, by the way, when we get to them. I just like Corey said, that 2 weeks ago was the Arizona going into Seattle, losing narrowly, and I feel like this is just the two teams that are pretty even, splitting their home and home in the division. So logically, I would say it makes sense for Arizona. Unless there's a big talent disparity, splits or some big mistake that you can't account for, splits in the division, I think, are the norm. That'd be an interesting stat to learn how many teams finish, like what the graph looks like of teams in all of their divisions. But I suspect that splitting in your division is the most common thing that happens. So this will happen, I think, in this case.
Gotcha. Yeah, I do. So you're going to Arizona too?
Yes, please.
Okay, gotcha. No worries. I honestly forgot whether Seattle won last week or not.
I think they did.
Yeah, they came back on the Jets, right?
Yeah.
That's what it was. Yeah, for a moment I was like, "Oh my God, the Jets are going to win another game this year," but no, they aren't probably. But I'm kind of with you guys too. It feels like Seattle is one of those, just like they're good, but boy, are they inconsistent. It took them like a half to wake up in a game at home, against the Jets. Big kickoff return for a touchdown. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's the first kickoff return for a touchdown this year.
I think there have been a couple.
Oh, okay. All right. That's the only one I can remember off the
Not
top.
many. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, I like Arizona. It just feels like they are a very feisty bunch. And honestly, their defense is a lot better than people give them credit for. It's because they're on the West Coast. It's because I don't think a lot of people watch games out there kind of once the 1 o'clock window closes. That they have a very underrated defense. So I like Arizona here too. I think they've kind of put the clamps down on Seattle. I will say this though. If there was ever a wide receiver that I would love to go trade for right now, give me some Jackson Smith-Njigba. Like, I love that kid. Like, if of all the guys that we were talking about maybe potentially trading for this offseason, if there's a move where it's like they can't afford to pay him a second contract, let's swoop in now. That guy's totally worth a first round pick in this offense. It would be really fun to see him and George Pickens just tear people apart. But anyway, again,
by the way, just quickly to answer your question, there have been 3 kickoff returns for touchdowns so far this year.
Oh, there you go. Prove me wrong as usual.
Yeah, Laviska Shenault was one you mentioned, I think. DJ Dallas for Arizona. So this game features 2 kickoff returners.
Oh, there you go.
Then, of course, the most obvious one, Robert Turpin from Dallas had one on Thanksgiving.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. Very, very true. Very true. So, well, and then someone, I don't know if this counts, but someone took what was it? A botched onside kickback, right?
It does in fact count. And
Yeah.
that just happened as well. Yeah, there you go.
There you go. So 4 technically. And I remember that one because it was some dude who I thought I can't remember his name. Shoot. It was for Dallas. It was a corner that I remember looking at from Georgia Tech when he came out, like Wanya Thomas or something, I think is his name. And I kept thinking, oh, that guy has a chance. He has a chance. And it was like, hey, I remember him. But anyway, let's move on to another game. Let's kind of stay out on the West Coast. San Fran is hosting Chicago. This is be Chicago's first game with their new interim head coach, Thomas Brown, after they let Matt Eberflus go after the Thanksgiving Day debacle, is how I'll just put it. It's probably one of the worst things you've ever seen in a football game, of why the hell did the game end that way. But anyway, hopefully Thomas Brown knows how to use his timeouts. San Fran is favored by 4 in this game. Will, we'll start with you. Sorry.
This is San Francisco, and by the way, I was distracted watching the kickoff, the botched onside kick return for a touchdown. Yeah, which was just sort of like he just ran right past the whole entire team, just ran by him going in the other direction. All right, this is Chicago and
at San Fran.
At San Fran, yeah.
San Fran is favored by 4.
Yeah, I feel like San Francisco, they lost Christian McCaffrey now for the year. I would like to think that they could just collapse, but I think they're a little bit too talented for that and a little bit too well coached to not fight this out to the end. So even if they're not the same team that they have been the last couple of years, I think this is maybe a get right week for them. Not that the Bears are terrible, but I feel like this is a game where the Bears are going there expecting to lose this game in a way. So that usually doesn't end well. I'll take the 49ers.
Okay. Korey.
Yeah, I just have trouble, even with no McCaffrey. I have trouble believing that San Fran's fallen this far. Chicago's been pretty bad this year, in my opinion. They have not been very good, and the bones of that San Francisco roster that was supposed to be a Super Bowl contender is still all there, and I can't pick against them at home versus the Bears. So I'm taking San Fran here.
Okay. I'm going Bears. I think I think this is like the ripe opportunity to pick for an upset. What is it? Teams coming off a coach firing, play insanely better than what they have been. And honestly, Chicago has not played that bad recently. Like offensively, they have started to figure some things out. Now I'll buy it, on Thursday, it took them to the second half for them to start moving the ball and scoring at points. But in the 2 games prior to that, they lost to Green Bay on a last-second field goal, and they were within. I mean, their last 3 games, I think they've lost by a combined of 5 points. It's ridiculous how close their games have been recently. I think I'm not saying they're going to turn the corner at all this year, but I think I know it's still Kyle Shanahan, and I know they're all extremely well coached, and there's a lot of, guys that you'd want on that team, just about on every team, from Debo to Fred Warner, just to that locker room makeup. But I'm calling my shot. I think the Bears find a way to win a really ugly one, because I think that's unfortunately that's the 49er style football right now. It's just ugly. With Trent Williams kind of missing some games here and there. I think this is just the chance for the Bears to kind of steal and win out on the West Coast.
I think you stole Corey's replacement coach bump.
Yeah. Usually that's my thing. The San Francisco for me. That's some point they got to show some life, right?
Yeah. So I get that, they do, but it just feels like everything it's like Murphy's Law. Everything that has gone wrong this year will go wrong, and it's just going to hurt you in the worst of ways possible. It's like, try one thing. Nope, he's out for the year. Well, what about nope? It's literally that South Park meme, and it's gone. But anyway, I like the Bears' chances to steal a game out on the West Coast this week.
But by the way, was there ever a more deserving coach firing than Chicago's coach from last week's game? I mean, that was an epic fail. I mean, the term is thrown around and everything, but that was an absolutely epic display of game management failure at the end of the game there, where they really didn't need much to get into field goal range, and they had lots of time and a timeout, and somehow didn't do any of that. I'm not really sure how that happened.
Yeah, it almost looked like vintage Mike Tomlin. I was trying to without doing that. But
after all those nice things said about him.
I know, it's like we have to come back
show
a little bit on this show, but but you honestly, watching that unfold, I was just like, what are you doing? You gotta go. You gotta call timeout. You gotta do one of them. You can't do both, or you can't not do both, and that's exactly what they did. Man. So hopefully, I'm right, and the Bears steal a win on the West Coast. But we'll kind of keep it about the West Coast. We're going to talk about the Chargers traveling to Kansas City next. Kansas City's at home, favored by 4. I'll start off with this. This is my upset again week. This is like my week to pick them. I think the Chargers are going to go into Kansas City and beat them. The Chiefs are winning in the most obscure ways possible, and it's unexplainable. At some point, the magic has to run out. They've had so many wishes with the genie from the lamp that the genie at some point has to be like, I'm done bailing y'all out. I know it's my job, but no more. I like the Chargers. I know they don't have J.K. Dobbins, which that's a little bit of a issue. The Chargers didn't exactly run the ball the greatest or whatever, but the Chargers defense, I think, is going to, combat the offense from the Chiefs. The one thing the Chiefs do have is they do have Pacheco back. Pacheco had a nice solid workload. Week 1 kind of looked like his old self, but I'm just taking the Chargers. I feel like the Chiefs magic has to run out some point. It's a division game. It's a big playoff implication of whether, the Chargers are going to be, one of the top wild cards or one of the last wild cards. So, yeah, give me the Chargers in an upset again. So, and yeah, I said they're by 4. So, Korey, I'll throw it to you.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. They beat the Panthers by 3. They beat the Raiders by 2. Those are 2 bad teams. And I don't really see I don't see this as being the game that kind of they kick it into gear into. They're going to be played, they're going to be playing the Mike Tomlin kind of ball against the Chargers, which is going to, Mahomes isn't going to get too many chances on the field. They're going to run the ball on the other side. I could see them clicking back into gear against like Cleveland next week, but I'm with you, Jeremy. I don't like this match for them at this stage of the season. I think that the Chargers are playing some pretty solid football right now, and so I'm going to take the Chargers here to beat Kansas City as well.
All right, Will.
Oh, you guys are such suckers for the flavor of the week. I think this is a game where, I mean, Kansas City's favored by 4, right? It's not a 3-point game. It's not like people, the bettors who, seeing both sides of this thinking that it's a close game or that Chargers are better than Chiefs. I feel like it's like the people said about the Steelers, the regular season game where, they look like they're winning they're just lucky at the end of the game. And like the kind of stuff I was talking about before, I feel like this Kansas City has this down cold. They have the quarterback to bail them out. They made a significant change last week. For some reason, Joshua Williams wasn't playing. I think he was like they had as cornerback coming off the bench or like in certain situations, but they moved to putting him out on the edge and just basically playing man, like being like, take this guy. And McDuffie hasn't really looked that good on the outside. He was like an all-pro in the slot. I think that could make a huge difference for their defense. If they can get that straightened out, that to me has been a bigger issue for them than what their offense is doing on the other side. I don't know. I still believe in the Chiefs. And I think it's once again, probably a home team split would be the sort of the right scenario to pick in this case. So I'm going to take Kansas City to win this game. I'm not sure if they'll cover 4. That's quite a lot against the Chargers team, but it wouldn't surprise me if they made a little bit of a statement. I think this is much like the Steelers do when they play division rivals. They don't want little brother to be, come in and walk all over them when they're on their home field.
Yeah, it's not that I don't believe in the Chiefs. It's more just like the luck has to run out at some point. I mean, the way they've won some of these games is ridiculous. I mean,
did the Patriots luck, did Tom Brady's luck ever run out? I mean, never really, right? I mean, maybe in the last season, but geez.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and there's all the chirping about, boy, it seems like they have all the luck in the world coming from the refs too, or whatever. And I always hate to use that, but they have been the beneficiary of some terrible calls. Not gonna lie, but I mean, just the way they've won some of these games is just mind blowing to me. So it's just
they have definitely like basically how the Bears have lost games this year and how the Chiefs have won games this year would make its own miniseries.
Right?
Kick, a penalty, a penalty that wasn't called a certain kind of penalty. We switched to other, like every possible way for sure.
Mm-hmm. Let's do one more before our game.
By the way, they put the best game of the week, like the best game of the month. They put it on Thursday Night Football, which, by the way, I'm not watching yet. But I'm just saying that it's we can't pick it because it's already started or whatever. But that's a ridiculous bit of scheduling. Honestly, it does no one any good to play the game that might be part of deciding who is even the number one seed for the playoffs. It's just silly to have it on a Thursday night short week.
I would agree.
That's my rant. Rant over. Go
Yeah,
ahead,
it's
Jeremy.
too bad because when I put games up on the board, I was like, well, we can't pick that. It's like, they're going right now. But that's a good game. So, but the game I'm referencing, the Bengals have to go to Dallas. Boy, I wrote that down, and I'm not sure if it's right. I have Cincinnati favored by 5.5.
That's correct. It's
Okay.
by,
All right. All right. Well, Korey, I'll let you start off with this one then. I could have swore I wrote that down wrong. I'm just looking up at the board, but go. You run with it, Korey.
the Bengals have been putting up I think 30 points for like 4 or 5 weeks now. Like they won like one of those games that I'm picking them to win just because of that. Like some point you're going to win games putting up 30 as bad as your defense is. I'm also really not Dallas's offense. They've like basically no run game. And so, maybe backs do matter. We could Hunter Lipke, put him at running back, give him the full workload maybe. He's been a Steelers Fury favorite. But 30 points. They're going to put up points again. They're bound to get some wins out of that. I'm taking them. I'll take them to cover. I think that they can I think they just outpace Dallas.
Okay. Will.
I don't think much of Dallas's team anyway, but I would say that right now Dallas is getting the worst quarterback play in the league. Cooper Rush is a fine player, but they just feel like teams just lose their minds when they have their backup quarterback in the game. Cooper Rush is not a rookie. He's started before, but they literally he's like playing with one arm tied behind his back because they're so afraid of him making a mistake. And I just feel like you got to let it roll a little bit. This would be the week to do it. You're playing the Bengals defense. In theory, you should make up a lot of wrongs with that, but I don't know. I don't really believe in Dallas's defense, and I definitely don't believe in Dallas's offense. So give me the Bengals.
Yeah. Okay.
One more week of relevance for the Bengals. One more week of hope.
Gotcha. I'm going to say this is the week where the hope gets really shot in the head. I don't know what it is.
Pick it up behind the barn, Jeremy.
I like the feisty picks this week. I don't know. I actually thought Dallas played, they didn't play great against the Giants, don't get me wrong, but I actually thought they showed some signs of life there. Rico Dowdle actually had a big day against the Giants, and the Giants defense is not great. The Bengals defense is not great. I think there's a recipe there where they find a way to win. And not only that, the Dallas defense, I think, finally started waking up a little bit. I'm not saying they're great, but I think they finally got so getting tired of getting called out by like Stephen A. Smith and all the talking heads, and Micah Parsons took it quite to heart. And it's like he played a lot better than he's been playing this year. So I don't know. I think there's a little bit of fire going on in Dallas right now. And I don't know what it is.
Don't say that. Don't say that around the coaching staff. Don't say the word fire.
No, yeah.
But I'm sure they're screening texts right now. They're like, does it say? No, it doesn't. Okay. It doesn't say anything about being fired. Oh man.
But I think Dallas has enough offensively to kind of keep up with the Bengals too. It looks like they're going to get. I think it's. I know from getting the first name right, but Jake Ferguson. He went through practice on Wednesday. I didn't see what his stats was for a day, but it's like they're going to be getting him back, and he was a big part of that offense. Kind of going into the year and at the end of last year. Just skill wise, Brandon Cooks was back. He scored a touchdown last week. You're against the Bengals defense, who had a lot of trouble covering multiple guys that could do stuff. I just think the Bengals, this is the straw that breaks the camel's back. So I like Dallas this week. So that moves us to our game. As we've said, the Browns are heading to Pittsburgh for part deuce of this AFC North matchup. Let's hope we don't lay a deuce. But Anyway, Pittsburgh at home, favored by 6.5. Boy, I feel like that's a lot. I know we're not exactly playing in a snowstorm this week, but it feels like this game's going to be closer than that. So I like Pittsburgh to win because I think we're going to split. I'll start off here. I think there's going to be some points scored too. You look at the past game, both the offenses had chances to move the ball and score. We waited until the fourth quarter, of course, but feeling like a 30-24 type of game here. Just miss out on covering. Will, let's go to you.
I think this is going to be a Steelers win as well, but I hate this line 6.5. I'm almost game to bet the Browns at 6.5. It just feels like once again division game and a team that they seem to have trouble scoring points against. I like I said, both all these passing yards and everything, all the points last week for these two teams. I just have just funny the way the NFL works is it's just you expect this offensive fireworks and then to come out and it's super low scoring tight game. So I like it. I like it on the lower scoring end. I'm tempted to say something like let's call it 22-16, as an odd a score as that is. But I just feel like, your Chris Boswell at home in December. I like their field goal situation, as is the field goal situation with every team in the AFC North. I'll say it every week. That would be a thing in that Dallas Cincinnati game. Like the difference in that game could just be that Dallas's field goal kicker and returns, their special teams are superior to Cincinnati. Could make a pretty good swing. So for the Steelers in this game, I also feel like it's a swing at home, especially that that should be enough to make the difference in the game. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's kind of close and if the Steelers aren't able to move the ball up and down the field the way that they did last week against Cincinnati. Just the Browns are not world beaters on defense, but they're better than Cincinnati. So I feel like they, in somehow they match up pretty well against the Steelers. They figured out a way to defend the Steelers pass rushers, and they figured out a way to, attack the Steelers pass protectors. And that seems to be the thing that keeps these games close. So like I said, 22-16, I'll call it. Take the under. Last week I said bang the over, and here's what's funny about that. It's 21-21 and that's 42. The over was 42.5. So I was like, it hung at 21-21 for a really long time. I was like, oh my God, will this be the end? I won't make it. So whatever it was, or the next score, the halftime score was 1 point short, and then they had that long stretch of not scoring. So anyway, I like the under, although that's always a sweat to bet the under in the NFL because teams score garbage points at the end of the games that are.
Yeah, I'll look that up, but I never look at what the over under is in these things. Do you have that, or
I think it was unusually high last week, which is why I thought I still would bet the over, but it took a little while to get there. So
yeah, boy, I'd be really tempted to bet the over again. It's right now on MGM. It's only at 43.5.
Yeah, that's what I have, 43.5. I still take the under all day.
Okay, all right.
Under all day with these two teams.
All right. Well, Korey, let's give us a prediction here.
I'm gonna say Steelers win. This could be just me remembering only the home games better, but I feel like the games where Chris Boswell's had 4 or 5 makes have really been the home games. So I could see that being the same. I could see a 19-14 win. I don't think either team's gonna score much. I think we'll drive, but then a touchdown and 4 field goals gets you to 19. I could easily see that being the avenue we get there. I think we win. I don't think it's the most convincing win in the world, but I think we get through this one, especially after we lost that snow game where that's real motivation. We're like, okay, we're playing them on our field now. We're better conditions, even though the snow game in theory favored us. But yeah, I'm taking a Steelers win here, but not to cover.
Hey, by the way, I think it's a good thing, a little hidden good thing that the Steelers lost to Cleveland a couple of weeks ago because the memory is still fresh. Because otherwise, you could see this being sort of the trap game with what's coming up. Everybody knows what the next 3 games are like, so I feel like this is a ripe opportunity for a true NFL trap game. So let's hope that the beating that they took 2 weeks ago is still, gets them over the hump here.
Yeah, and since we were talking about it, it's going to be a 1 o'clock game, if I remember correctly. Sound right again?
Yep.
I will say the weather is looking mightily better. We're looking like a 50-degree weather Sunday, so no slipping and sliding around this week, which will be nice. And honestly, I think that favors us more than it favors them, because we have these high twitch pass rushers that seem to where it's like their explosiveness sometimes is absolutely robbed in the snow. When they have to play like a smaller, I have to get through someone type of game. I feel like we got a lot of that in that Thursday game, whereas like there's only so much you could do, in the snow as far as cutting and running and trying to do all that goes. So maybe it allows our defense to play a little quicker this week as well, just being a more clean field.
Well, this will be the first game with new turf. They always replace the turf after
Right.
the high school championships and the pit season is done. So there will be that, like in the center of the field, I bet there'll be some fresh, slippery turf.
Yeah, gotcha. No, you just said we were going to have to avoid the middle of the field. Why would you do that?
Oh, that should work. That shouldn't be a problem.
Gotcha.
Jeremy, I feel like we should just let Korey talk about whatever he wants to talk about for the next 5 minutes, just to make up for the disparity in airtime.
I know, Korey. You've been
quiet down there, dude.
Talk to these. I don't. Maybe it's just because I'm in my own zone right now, but I felt like I brought some, maybe only the Hard Knocks part, but
can we talk like 2 minutes of college football playoff?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
So Korey, what's your opinion about the latest rankings that they put up there, where they some of the at-large teams don't seem to be necessarily a lot of rhyme and reason?
Yeah, there definitely is that SEC bias. I think who's the team that's in the top, sitting in the top 25? It's Missouri, right? Where Missouri's sitting in the top 25, which is where that Alabama ranked win gets thrown across the table.
Yeah.
And I don't know, listen, it's a shame that I just would rather see like Miami than Alabama. I'd rather see South Carolina than Alabama. South Carolina had that whole LSU game, which was like unfortunate. If they won that, they're in. But I don't know. I think the big thing for me is I want to see Indiana in. Obviously, they're looking good, right? Indiana should be in.
Indiana, I think, is well. I mean, this is our contention. Jeremy, of course, is a huge Indiana fan, so
what? No.
I'm not expecting him to say anything bad about them. And I think it's admirable. I mean, chapeau. They had a wonderful season so far, but I don't think that's a team. I think if they are sort of having a season that's like a really good non-Power 5 team in terms of like who they played and how they beat them convincingly. It strikes me a little bit like some of the teams we've had in the past from non-Power 5 that didn't make it into, don't move up the polls the way that you would like them to move up the polls, because we all get a chance. I think Liberty 2 years ago, for instance, right?
Yeah.
I think that's kind of where Indiana is. So in a way, I'm glad they get their shot, because hey, maybe they can come up with sneak a win and make me look bad in saying this, but I feel like if what we're picking is who are the strongest teams that have the best chance to win the entire playoff, they would not be on my list of 12. But we're also going to have Boise State that Boise State's not the worst team. I think actually whoever comes out of the Big 12 is probably going to be the worst team in the tournament. So there will be teams that are behind Indiana, and who knows what Notre Dame is. I think that's another team that they have a couple of good wins, but they're not, they also lost some, a terrible game, and they have been close in some others to, looking like they might lose one. So I mean, I'm excited for the expanded playoff field, so I don't want to let go of that, but I'm pretty disappointed and particularly about Miami. I'm a little disappointed about South Carolina, because I feel like they have the kind of team that it would be easy to see them winning, making a run in the playoffs. But at this point, I just should be glad that we're getting them. But it seems like a lot of untested teams. These watered down, Jeremy, I'll throw this to you, but doesn't it feel like because the Big 12 or the Big 10 and SEC in particular got all these new teams in, that it watered down in a way what their schedules were like. Like they ended up playing a lot of filler teams, and there weren't that many matchups between the teams we thought were really good. And the ACC is also true.
Yeah.
You make a good point there, but I want to point something out too. So one of the big reasons why the Hoosiers could never get ahead, and I'm not saying that they've had good teams in the last recent few years or not, but when you have to play Ohio State, Michigan State, Penn State every single year in the east side of the Big Ten, you're not winning a ton of games to really go anywhere. So, I mean, Indiana, people, say about the strength of schedule thing. Look, I get it. It's not like we've played like amazing teams this year, but we have battled the best for the last 20 years and haven't been able to get anywhere. So when people say, oh, your strength of schedule, too damn bad. We've been having to deal with that shit for the last 3 decades of the best schedule. Literally, before you added those teams to the Big Ten and it finally, dissolved the two sides, the Hoosiers, I think for the last 5 years before that happened, had every single season had one of the 15th, it was a 15 or higher ranked strength of schedule of who they had to play year in and year out. So we have faced murderers row in the past. So I'm not going to complain when, we finally get a schedule where it's like, if we would have been in the Big Ten West, we would have been just as good as like Purdue's been the last few years with Braum, sneaking a chance into the championship game 2 years ago. But then the other thing that people don't realize about this strength of schedule was it should have been a lot better, but Louisville weaseled its way out of playing Indiana this year. So instead of playing Western Illinois, I think is who we played in like week 2 or 3. That was supposed to be a game at Louisville, which they backed out of. And the big thing was, I won't go too deep into it because this isn't a Hoosiers podcast or anything, but there was some back and forth about how, with the new expanded conference, do we really want to keep this or whatever? And Louisville made us eat all the money that we offered to do for that game, so they couldn't play us. So it's like, if we would have played Louisville at the beginning of the season, our strength of schedule would be way higher.
Be better, yeah.
It'd be a lot higher.
I don't know. I feel like it probably would behoove if you're going to have these mega giant conferences, it would behoove them to have 2 rounds of playoffs in their conference. I feel like if you could qualify the top 4, even if they didn't all play each other prior to that, and then give them an extra game to sort out which of those teams are really the best, and then you don't have to have this conversation about whether there should be 4 teams, and then that would sort of even the field a little bit. And then I feel like you should also, if you're not in one of those conferences that has 30 teams, then you ought to be playing somebody good from the another conference that doesn't have 30 great teams, right? So like the ACC and the Big 12 would have benefited about scheduling a game with each other or whatever, rather than playing an FCS team or something, which is what they all do.
But I'm with you guys though.
Sorry.
Sorry. We've been talking over Korey all up, so go for it.
It's just like you can't help it. When I said taking the money from an FCS team, he was just like, wait a minute, that's a line too far.
Listen, they got their own playoff things going. Let's expand it to 24. But no, what I was gonna say is it's we say Boise State, the only undefeated team in this thing is Oregon, who was on the ropes versus Boise State. And I don't even Boise State is like that incredibly good. It's like you got Boise State, who had Oregon on the ropes. Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois.
Yeah.
Ball State.
Like,
one of those two.
It was Northern Illinois.
Georgia's looked lethargic. Notre Dame, we talked about. Penn State, does anyone believe Penn State's going to win multiple big games in a row? If they win this one, no. So it's like, is Texas the standout? Like, is that? And what has Texas done historically? So it's like, this is like the perfect first year for this. Because it's funny, because everyone said NIL is going to cost so much, it's going to be all clustered at the top, which in theory it is. But clearly, looking at how this season's played out, at least, SMU's a top 10 team. Boise State's a top 10 team in front of Alabama. I mean, who seen that coming?
Indiana. I mean, who would have thunk? I mean, at the beginning of the year, we were thinking Kurt Signetti, get us to 6 wins, let's get a bowl game.
Yeah, that would have been a great outcome.
That's been the flag that we've flown for years. Play 13. For the love of God, just play one more game every year than what we're scheduled.
Well, I think next week maybe we'll know what the matchups are and we can talk about this a little bit more. But I got a little like an inkling about SMU, that SMU might have a team that most people don't know and haven't seen them, but they got great run game. They have a really solid college quarterback. They got some players on defense. They lost their top receiving target about a month ago, which is definitely downgraded them a little bit. But yeah, I think Korey makes a good point. I feel like that it's pretty wide open. And Boise State is not a terrible team. They play good defense. Their quarterback is good but not great. The kind of guy that's probably not going to make too many mistakes, which is probably fine for them most of the time. And they have the best running back in the country. So, not impossible. And it's also possible they'll lose to UNLV. I mean, UNLV is loaded as well. So you never know. You could be seeing Memphis in the playoff instead of Boise State. How would that go over?
Oh my God.
Or Tulane, one of those teams. Yeah.
I do have a question. If Army beats because Boise State has a game, right? Boise State plays
UNLV.
UNLV.
Yeah. If Boise State loses and Army beats Tulane, Army has one loss, and that one loss is Notre Dame. Does that slot them in or no?
They're I think third in line. Like I said, it's either Memphis or Tulane. I forgot. I think do Memphis and Tulane play each other?
Memphis is 10-2 though. Like, how much does this go
Yeah, but
off?
the Army strength of schedule is not good.
So because I can't remember the system. There's not an auto qualifier for outside of 5.
It is one conference championship from outside the Big Four. And the thing is, and here's what I would say: just look by what their rankings are. Last week, I think they had someone ahead of Army. That's what I was getting.
UNLV, if UNLV beat Boise, UNLV would be in front of
UNLV would have a pretty good argument. They're not necessarily, but they're ranked the highest right now of any team left. So yeah, and UNLV has some good wins. They had that whole quarterback controversy earlier in the year where they lost their starting quarterback. He left the team. But yeah, I would say, Army and Memphis have a slight chance, but more likely UNLV.
I want to see a service school go against one of these.
Yeah, that would be
because Notre Dame's defense is stacked. Like they knocked out Navy. Navy is pretty good too. They knocked out Navy and Army. But
I'm going to ask a question that's going to sound ridiculous to most of our audience. But Korey, do you remember Boise State, Oklahoma? The game with the crazy ending and
I think that was 2007.
Yeah, the Statue of Liberty play to win it.
Who was the Boise State running back then? Because that's
Ian Johnson.
Yeah, Ian Johnson, exactly.
No, okay,
I remember that.
I don't remember that.
This is one of the greatest, upsets you'll ever see in college football, and particularly the way it ended with the long hook and ladder. The crazy, the last couple touchdowns that Boise State scored were amazing, and then the 2-point conversion with the Statue of Liberty, insane.
Peterson. Yeah.
Oh, it was Adrian Peterson for Oklahoma. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and Boise State was a part of the WAC.
Yeah. So I mean, the thing is that would be Army beating Notre Dame. That kind of upset.
Yeah.
So, Boise State this year is a lot better than that Boise State team was, but they made the most out of it. That is for sure. And I mean, you could argue that Oklahoma really wasn't that motivated to play Boise State, but the end of that game was nutso. So let's hope we get some stuff like that. I hope that with the playoffs that we'll get at least half the games will be that kind of circus.
Yeah. I just don't see many blowouts. Like maybe 2-3 years ago with like Georgia and Bama, it'd been like, oh, those two are going to cruise through the bracket. Like there is no like sitting
There's
powerhouse.
no clear favorite.
No.
Yeah.
It's like Oregon is the 1 seed and Boise State, who's good, but I don't think anyone's picking Boise State over Texas or especially Penn State. And then I don't know. It should. Hopefully, it's a fun bracket. Hopefully, it doesn't. Hopefully, you get some good style matchups.
Yeah. It'd be nice if they could sneak Miami in there somewhere because you could at least have, a quarterback who could overcome a team that's not as quite as good as some of the other teams. But,
yeah, it'll be criminal if Cam Ward's last game in a college uniform was like this past weekend, or like he doesn't play in the bowl game or something, because that kid's way too good to go out like that. Compared to an Alabama team that has just lost. I mean, honestly, that lost to Oklahoma, I thought they are done. There is
should
no
have been the end of them, but nope, they're the Terminator when it comes to. I mean, just as someone said, it's not a tournament; it's an invitational. And if you look at it that way, then having Alabama and Georgia and Ohio State were locks. Nothing was going to Notre Dame. Nothing. If they said at the beginning of the year, who are the 5 or 6 teams that we really want to have in the tournament? I think they're all there.
Mm-hmm.
I heard a fun little factoid, and I like Will Howard, or I liked Will Howard more before this year. I'm a little down on him compared to where I was, but the reason why Cam Ward didn't go to Ohio State is because they told him he has to go to class.
They told Cam Ward he has to go to class. Yeah,
they told Cam Ward he has to go to class. So if he's at Miami, you can take a.
What does that tell you about Miami? Oh my God!
Wow.
Oh Lord. Yeah. Well, he's going to get a degree in NFL first round draft pick contract. So I guess you could be worse.
Yeah, a degree in economics, how not to blow it all at once. Yeah.
Seriously,
he doesn't play school. He plays football.
Yeah. Right. Right.
Well,
if there was ever like a YouTube clip to sum up this college football playoff, it'd be, so you're telling me there's a chance. All right. It's like, it feels like everyone, if they draw the person who they want in the first round and could somehow win a second round game, you never know. You could go on a run. And one last thing to close out the show. It's kind of a knock on me. So I did something pretty incredible this past week, but then I panicked and ruined it. So, believe it or not, I went perfect in the NFL games last week. I had a parlay going. I went perfect, but I bit my own hand. So I'm watching the Tampa Bay Carolina game, and it goes to overtime, and I'm thinking, shit, this game's going to screw me anyway. So Tampa Bay, they missed the long field goal to give the ball to Carolina, in plus range, and Carolina's driving, they're running it. I'm like, well, shit. I'm looking at my app and it's like, ooh, cash out. I cashed out too early. I cashed out too early and I left $390 out. Turned a $1 bet into $56. Don't get me wrong, but I was like, as soon as that fumble happened, I was like, no.
Get out.
Yeah, exactly. But oh my God, I was so furious. I was like, oh my God, you panicked and you totally blew it.
Don't bet at home.
Anyway, I'm picking too many upsets this week, so there's no way I'm going perfect again. So
we had 3, by the way, in the quote unquote official Steeler Fury poll. We had 3 guys had a perfect week last week picking games. Not against the spread, but picking straight up. Still an accomplishment.
Yeah. Well, shoot. Now that doesn't sound as fun as it was, but okay.
but you cashing out for your $390, that's fun.
Yeah.
That's
all right. Well, thank you all for joining us for another episode here at the SteelerFury.com podcast, where you got a little bit more than just Steelers action this week. So I'm your host, Jeremy Kohlman. He's Smith is Smoking on the message boards, joined by Wil Masisak, his Bradshaw to Ben, and Korey Karbowsky, his Korey 39. Hopefully we keep on the roll here and get a win at home against the Cleveland Browns, so we can have a really fun episode of Hard Knocks where Jameis Winston says some crazy ass shit to make it even funnier than it is. So, but all right, well, here we go, Steelers. Hopefully we get that W.
Rock on.